Bath, 1809. The assembly rooms hummed with the particular energy of a successful season. Young ladies in pastel silks twirled past Eleanor Ashford's position near the potted palms, their laughter bright as crystal. At 32, Eleanor had long since accepted her invisibility at such gatherings. She was the wallpaper against which younger, prettier girls displayed themselves. "Your sisters have done remarkably well," Lady Pemberton observed, settling beside Eleanor with a rustle of violet taffeta. The older woman's eyes tracked across the room to where three radiant young women held court among Bath's most eligible gentlemen. "Indeed," Eleanor replied, genuine warmth in her voice. "Beatrice's engagement to Lord Hartley was announced last week. Margaret has captured the interest of Sir Edmund Blackwood, and sweet Charlotte has no fewer than 4 suitors vying for her attention." "Extraordinary," Lady Pemberton murmured, though her sharp gaze remained fixed on Eleanor's face. Considering that just 5 years ago the Ashford family was nearly destitute, one might wonder how such a dramatic reversal of fortune occurred. Eleanor's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her fan. Few knew the truth, that her maternal uncle's legacy, intended solely for her, had been quietly redirected to fund her sisters' debuts and establish their social standing. Her own prospects had been the price willingly paid. "Fortune smiles on the deserving," Eleanor said carefully. "Does it indeed?" Lady Pemberton's tone sharpened. "Then perhaps fortune should be informed that your father's investments in the northern mills are failing." The creditors whisper, "Eleanor, without intervention, the Ashford name will be tainted with scandal before the season ends." Cold dread settled in Eleanor's stomach. The money was gone then, every penny carefully hoarded and strategically deployed. Nothing remained. "I see," she said quietly. "Do you?" Lady Pemberton leaned closer. "Your sacrifices will count for nothing if bankruptcy destroys what you've built. Your sister's engagements will dissolve like morning mist." Across the room, Eleanor's father, Sir William Ashford, held forth among a group of gentlemen, his face flushed with wine and self-importance. At 58, he retained the handsome features that had once made him a celebrated rake, though dissipation had carved its price into the lines around his eyes. Since Eleanor's mother's death 7 years ago, he had careened from one financial disaster to another, gambling and speculating with increasingly desperate abandon. "Perhaps I might speak with him," Eleanor began. "And say what?" Lady Pemberton's laugh held no humor. "What haven't you already done? You've given everything, my dear." The musicians struck up a new melody, and the crowd shifted, creating a sudden opening in the throng. Through it, Eleanor glimpsed a figure that made her breath catch. "The Duke of Ravenswood," the master of ceremonies announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed assembly. Alexander Thorne, 6th Duke of Ravenswood, stood framed in the doorway like something from a classical painting. At 37, he commanded attention not merely through title, one of only 3 dukedoms in England with the power to directly advise the crown, but through sheer presence. His dark auburn hair caught the candlelight, accentuating aristocratic features that might have been carved from marble. His green eyes, the color of deep forest shadows, surveyed the assembly with detached interest. "Well," Lady Pemberton breathed, "this is unexpected. His Grace rarely deigns to attend provincial gatherings." Eleanor observed the ripple of excitement spreading through the room. Mothers straightened, daughters preened, and calculating gazes sharpened with predatory focus. "Lady Georgiana Fairfax is said to be his choice," whispered a young woman nearby. "An alliance between Ravenswood and the Fairfax fortune would be the match of the decade." "Naturally," her companion agreed. "A duke of his stature would never settle for less than perfection." Eleanor watched as the Duke moved through the crowd, acknowledging greetings with minimal encouragement. There was something isolated in his bearing, as though he existed behind glass, visible but untouchable. "Your father is making a terrible mistake," Lady Pemberton hissed suddenly. Eleanor followed her gaze with dawning horror. Sir William was weaving toward the Duke, his gait unsteady, his expression animated by wine and reckless optimism. "Excuse me," Eleanor murmured, moving quickly to intercept him. She reached her father's side just as he opened his mouth to address the Duke. "Father," she said quietly, slipping her hand through his arm. "Lady Pemberton was hoping to discuss the musical next week. Shall we?" "Not now, Eleanor," he slurred, attempting to shake off her hand. "Opportunity presents itself. Ravenswood is here." "Sir William Ashford." The Duke's voice was low and cultured, with an edge that suggested he missed nothing. Eleanor found herself looking up into those remarkable green eyes, and felt a curious sensation, as though she were being catalogued and assessed with uncomfortable accuracy. "Your Grace," her father stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. "What an honor." "Indeed," the Duke's gaze shifted to Eleanor. "And this is?" "My eldest daughter, Miss Eleanor Ashford. Eleanor, make your curtsy to his Grace." Eleanor sank into a practiced curtsy, keeping her eyes appropriately lowered. "Your Grace." "Miss Ashford." There was a thoughtful quality to his voice. "I understand you manage your father's household affairs." The statement, so specific and unexpected, made Eleanor's head snap up. "I do, Your Grace, among other duties, and quite capably from what I hear." Before Eleanor could respond, a vision in emerald silk materialized at the Duke's elbow. Lady Georgiana Fairfax was everything Eleanor was not: young, beautiful, and supremely confident in her own desirability. At 23, the Earl's daughter possessed the kind of luminous perfection that stopped conversation. "Your Grace," she breathed, her curtsy calculated to display her considerable charms. "What a delightful surprise to find you in Bath." "Lady Georgiana." The Duke's acknowledgement was correct, but notably cool. "You simply must dance with me," she continued, laying a proprietary hand on his arm. "Everyone expects it, and I would so hate to disappoint." "Expectations," the Duke said quietly, his eyes returning to Eleanor, "are a peculiar burden, are they not, Miss Ashford?" "Indeed, Your Grace," Eleanor replied, startled by the direct question, "though I find them easier to bear when they align with one's own desires." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his severe features. "An excellent philosophy." He turned back to Lady Georgiana. "If you'll excuse me, I find myself fatigued by travel. Perhaps another time." With a slight bow to Eleanor and a nod to her father, the Duke withdrew, leaving Lady Georgiana staring after him with barely concealed fury. "How extraordinary," Sir William muttered, watching the Duke's departure. "He spoke more to you than to Georgiana Fairfax. I wonder—" "It means nothing," Eleanor said firmly, though her heart beat strangely fast. "Come, father, let us find some coffee." But that night, as Eleanor lay in bed in their rented rooms on the Royal Crescent, she found herself thinking of green eyes and the peculiar intensity of the Duke's attention. It meant nothing, she told herself firmly. Men like Alexander Thorne did not notice women like Eleanor Ashford. The following afternoon proved her wrong. "A caller for you, Miss Ashford," their maid announced, her eyes wide with astonishment. "The Duke of Ravenswood." Eleanor nearly dropped the household accounts she'd been reviewing. There must be some mistake. "No mistake, miss. He's waiting in the drawing room. Your father is already gone down." With trembling hands, Eleanor checked her appearance in the mirror. Her simple morning dress of gray muslin did nothing to flatter her unremarkable features. Her dark blonde hair, more brown than gold, was arranged in its usual practical style. She was no beauty, no young innocent. She was simply Eleanor, competent, overlooked, resigned. She found the Duke standing by the window, his imposing figure making their modest drawing room seem cramped. Her father hovered nearby, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Miss Ashford," the Duke turned as she entered. "Thank you for receiving me." "Your Grace," Eleanor curtsied, her mind racing with questions. "This is unexpected." "I imagine so." He waited until she was seated before taking his own chair. "I shall be direct, Miss Ashford. I require a wife." The bald statement hung in the air between them. Eleanor felt the room tilt slightly. "I see," she managed. "No, I suspect you don't." The corner of his mouth lifted fractionally. "I require a specific type of wife, one who understands duty and discretion, one who can manage complex households without drama or excessive demands on my time, one who harbors no illusions about romantic love." He leaned forward slightly. "I have observed you, Miss Ashford. You have sacrificed your own prospects to secure your sister's futures. You have managed your father's affairs through increasingly difficult circumstances with quiet efficiency. You are practical, discreet, and sensible. These are the qualities I value above all others." Eleanor struggled to process his words. Your Grace, surely Lady Georgiana is precisely what I do not want, he interrupted, his tone hardening. A woman whose beauty is matched only by her ambition, who would view our marriage as a stepping stone to social dominance and expect me to dance attendance upon her every whim. He rose and moved to the window, his profile sharp against the afternoon light. I have responsibilities that require my complete attention, Miss Ashford. Parliament, Crown business, extensive estates across 3 counties, strategic investments that affect hundreds of families. I need a partner who understands that my focus must remain on these duties. And you believe I might be that partner? Eleanor couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. I do. He turned back to face her. I also know about your family's financial situation. Your father's investments have failed catastrophically. His creditors are circling. Without intervention, the Ashford name will be destroyed within weeks, along with your sister's brilliant matches. Heat rose in Eleanor's cheeks. You seem remarkably well informed about our private affairs. Information is valuable, Miss Ashford. I make it my business to be well informed. He returned to his seat. I offer you a straightforward arrangement. As my Duchess, you would have the means to resolve your family's debts completely. Your sister's positions would become unassailable. Your father would be protected from his own worst impulses. He paused, studying her face. In return, you would manage my households, attend necessary functions, and present a united, dignified front to society. You would be mistress of Thornhaven, my principal seat in Derbyshire, as well as my London residence and several smaller properties. You would want for nothing material. Eleanor forced herself to think past the shock. Forgive my impertinence, Your Grace, but why me? Surely there are dozens of suitable young ladies who would accept such an arrangement gladly. Something flickered in those green eyes, a vulnerability quickly masked. There are complications surrounding me, Miss Ashford. Rumors, some true, some malicious. A wife of unimpeachable character and mature judgment would silence many tongues. Younger women tend to require emotional attention I cannot provide. You understand duty as I do. We would suit. I see. And suddenly she did. He needed a shield, not a companion, someone respectable but not ambitious. You require protection as much as a partner. I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. He rose. I don't require an immediate answer. Take 24 hours to consider. I shall return tomorrow at the same time. After his departure, Eleanor remained motionless, her mind churning. The Duke's offer was salvation and sentence combined. Financial security for her family, yes, but at what cost? A lifetime bound to a man who viewed marriage as a business transaction, who had stated plainly that his heart was not part of the bargain. Yet what choice did she have? She had already sacrificed her youth, her independence, her dreams. Was this final sacrifice truly so different? When her father burst into the room minutes later, his expression wild with jubilation, Eleanor already knew what her answer must be. Is it true? He demanded. Has Ravenswood offered for you? Yes, Eleanor replied quietly, though I haven't yet given my answer. Haven't given? Eleanor, do you understand what this means? He paced frantically. We are saved, all of us, not just any duke, but Ravenswood himself, one of the 3 most powerful men in England. He knows about our debts, father. That's why he's offering. Sir William waved this away impatiently. What does it matter? The result is the same. Eleanor, you will be a duchess. Your sisters will be connected to one of the greatest families in the realm. He doesn't want love, Eleanor said, more to herself than to him. He wants convenience and competence. Her father laughed harshly. Love? You're 32 years old, Eleanor. Far too old for such romantic nonsense. Ravenswood offers you position, wealth, security, everything we thought impossible. Eleanor turned away, staring out at the elegant curve of the royal crescent. Once she had dreamed of love, of partnership, of a life that belonged to her alone. Those dreams had died incrementally, sacrificed one after another to family necessity. I haven't decided yet, she said quietly. He returns tomorrow. But she had decided. They both knew it. By the time the Duke of Ravenswood called the following afternoon, Eleanor was composed and resolved. She had spent the intervening hours building walls around the tender parts of herself, reinforcing her practical nature, reminding herself that duty had always been her North Star. "You've made your decision," the Duke said as soon as they were alone. It wasn't a question. "I have." Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "I accept your offer, Your Grace." Relief crossed his features, quickly controlled. "Alexander," he said, "if we are to be married, you should use my given name." "Alexander," she repeated, testing the name. It felt intimate and strange. He withdrew a small box from his coat. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said, opening it to reveal a magnificent ring, an oval emerald surrounded by diamonds set in gold. The Ravenswood betrothal ring. As he slid it onto her finger, his hand brushed hers, a brief electric contact that sent an unexpected warmth through Eleanor's body. The ring was heavy, its weight a physical reminder of the commitment she had just made. "We'll announce our engagement at the Assembly Rooms tomorrow evening," he said. "The wedding will take place at Thornhaven in 1 month's time." "So soon?" Eleanor couldn't hide her surprise. "I see no reason for delay." His expression softened fractionally. "Unless you require more time?" "No," she said quickly. "A month is acceptable." He nodded. "My solicitor will call on your father this afternoon to discuss the settlement. I've instructed him to address the most pressing debts immediately." Gratitude welled up despite her determination to remain detached. "Thank you, Alexander. That is generous." He studied her for a long moment. "I believe we shall suit one another, Eleanor," he said finally. "We are neither of us given to excessive sentiment or unrealistic expectations. It will make for a more comfortable arrangement." As he bowed over her hand in farewell, Eleanor wondered if he truly believed that, or if, like her, he merely hoped it was true. The announcement of their engagement caused a sensation that rippled through Bath society like a stone thrown into still water. At the Assembly Rooms the following evening, Eleanor found herself the center of unprecedented attention. "How did you manage it?" Lady Georgiana hissed when they found themselves momentarily isolated near the refreshment table. "Everyone knows he was meant for me." Eleanor regarded the beautiful younger woman with carefully maintained composure. Perhaps His Grace had different expectations than everyone assumed. Lady Georgiana's perfect features twisted with fury. "You're nothing. No beauty, no fortune, no youth. What could a man like Ravenswood possibly see in you?" "Evidently," Eleanor replied quietly, "something more valuable than superficial attractions." The Duke's appearance at her elbow cut off Lady Georgiana's venomous retort. "Eleanor," he said, offering his arm, "I believe this waltz is ours." As he led her onto the floor, Eleanor was conscious of hundreds of eyes watching, assessing, speculating. Alexander's hand settled at her waist, warm and steady. "You handled that well," he murmured as they began to move. "Lady Georgiana can be difficult. She believes you should have chosen her. I chose the woman best suited to be my Duchess." His green eyes held hers. "I don't make decisions lightly, Eleanor." Something in his gaze made her heart skip unexpectedly. This was supposed to be an arrangement, she reminded herself, a practical solution to mutual problems, nothing more. Yet as they moved together across the polished floor, Eleanor couldn't quite suppress the small, dangerous hope that, perhaps, just perhaps, there might someday be more to their marriage than mere convenience. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning at Thornhaven, the Duke's principal estate in Derbyshire. Eleanor had seen illustrations of great houses in books, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of Thornhaven, a magnificent Palladian mansion set in landscaped grounds that seemed to stretch forever, its honey-colored stone glowing in the autumn sunlight. The ceremony itself was small but dignified, conducted in the private chapel with only family and a few close associates present. As Eleanor spoke her vows, Alexander's voice was steady and assured. His hand, when he slipped a wedding band onto her finger beside the emerald betrothal ring, was warm but impersonal. "Your Grace," he murmured when the ceremony concluded, and Eleanor realized with a start that the title now belonged to her. She was a duchess, the Duchess of Ravenswood. The wedding breakfast was a formal affair, conversation polite but distant. Eleanor's sisters chatted excitedly about their own upcoming nuptials. Her father drank too much champagne, and Alexander remained courteous but remote throughout. As evening approached and the guests departed, Eleanor found herself alone with her new husband for the first time. They stood in the magnificent drawing room, awkwardness settling between them like an unwelcome guest. "Your chambers are in the west wing," Alexander said, "adjacent to mine. I've had them prepared according to your preferences as much as I knew them." "Thank you," Eleanor replied, suddenly nervous. That was thoughtful. He moved to pour 2 glasses of sherry, handing one to her. "I want you to be comfortable here, Eleanor. Thornhaven is your home now. Its management is entirely in your hands. I shall do my best to honor the responsibility." "I don't doubt it." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. About tonight, Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks, understanding his meaning. "Yes?" "There's no expectation," he said carefully. "That is, I hope for an heir eventually, but there's no rush. We should become better acquainted first." Relief and something oddly like disappointment warred within her. "Of course, that seems sensible." After an awkward silence, Alexander set down his glass. "Perhaps you'd like to rest after the day's events. Dinner will be informal, just the 2 of us, at 8. Alone in her chambers, a suite more luxurious than anywhere she had ever lived, Eleanor sank onto a delicate chair and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her new reality. She was married to a duke, a man she barely knew, who had married her for convenience and competence, not love. What had she done? The days that followed established a pattern. Alexander rose early and spent mornings managing estate business. Eleanor met with the housekeeper, Mrs. Thornberry, learning the rhythms of running a household that employed over 50 servants. Afternoons, she explored Thornhaven's extensive grounds or read in the magnificent library. Evenings, she and Alexander dined together, conversation polite but careful, both circling around topics too personal or revealing. They were strangers sharing a house, a title, a life, but nothing deeper. On the 10th day, Eleanor was reviewing menus in the morning room when Alexander appeared unexpectedly. "I wondered if you might ride with me this afternoon," he said without preamble. "There's something I'd like to show you." Surprised but pleased, Eleanor agreed. An hour later, mounted on a gentle mare from Thornhaven's exceptional stables, she followed Alexander along a woodland path that wound through the estate. They rode in companionable silence until they emerged into a hidden valley. At its center stood a small stone cottage, charming and well-maintained, surrounded by autumn brilliant gardens. "What is this place?" Eleanor asked, enchanted. "My grandmother's retreat," Alexander replied, dismounting and helping Eleanor down. "When the demands of being duchess became overwhelming, she would come here to find peace. It's yours now if you want it, a place that's entirely your own." The gesture, so thoughtful and unexpected, brought tears to Eleanor's eyes. "Alexander, thank you. Truly." He looked uncomfortable with her emotion. "I simply thought you might value having somewhere private, somewhere you need not be a duchess." They walked through the cottage together, 3 small rooms furnished simply but tastefully with books and comfortable chairs and windows that overlooked the garden. It was perfect. "Tell me about your grandmother," Eleanor said as they sat on a stone bench outside. Alexander's expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. "She was extraordinary, strong, intelligent, kind. She taught me that duty need not be loveless, that strength and gentleness could coexist." He paused. "She died when I was 20. I still miss her." "She would be pleased you've given me this," Eleanor said gently. He turned to look at her, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "I want you to be happy here, Eleanor. I know our marriage is not conventional, but I would like for us to be friends at least, partners in truth, not merely title." "I would like that too," Eleanor replied softly. That evening, something shifted between them. Conversation flowed more easily over dinner. Alexander asked about her childhood, her interests, her thoughts on the estate management challenges she'd observed. Eleanor found herself genuinely laughing at a dry observation he made about parliamentary politics. Later, in the library, he showed her his favorite volumes: poetry, philosophy, histories. They discovered shared loves: Shakespeare, the Lake poets, Gothic novels they both pretended not to enjoy. "I wouldn't have expected a duke to read novels," Eleanor teased gently. "I wouldn't have. Expected my Duchess to challenge my reading choices, he countered, and the warmth in his eyes made her heart flutter unexpectedly. As weeks passed, their friendship deepened. Alexander began seeking Eleanor's counsel on estate matters, genuinely valuing her insights. She accompanied him on visits to tenant farms, impressing everyone with her quick grasp of agricultural concerns and her genuine interest in people's welfare. They established small rituals, morning rides when weather permitted, afternoon tea in the library, evening discussions that ranged from serious to playful. Eleanor discovered that beneath his austere exterior, Alexander possessed keen intelligence and subtle wit. He, in turn, seemed to appreciate her practical wisdom and quiet humor. Yet they remained careful with each other, maintaining polite distance, sleeping in separate chambers, their marriage unconsummated, and their deeper feelings unspoken. Until Lady Georgiana Fairfax arrived uninvited. "She's here," Alexander said grimly, finding Eleanor in the conservatory one December morning. Claiming she was in the neighborhood and hoped to pay her respects. Eleanor set down her pruning shears. "I see. I'll send her away immediately." "No." Eleanor surprised herself with her firmness. "That would cause talk. We'll receive her properly, show her every courtesy, and make it abundantly clear that she is a stranger to us both." Alexander's expression warmed with something like pride. "You're certain?" "Quite certain." Lady Georgiana, resplendent in a traveling costume of deep blue velvet, settled into the drawing room with the air of someone returning to familiar territory. "Your Grace," she purred to Eleanor, "how charming you've made everything. So cozy." The subtle insult hung in the air. Eleanor smiled serenely. "We find it comfortable. But then we prefer substance to show." "Indeed." Georgiana turned her attention to Alexander. "Your Grace, I've so missed our conversations. Remember those long discussions about art and philosophy at Lady Pemberton's salon?" "Vaguely," Alexander replied coolly, moving to stand beside Eleanor's chair, a subtle but unmistakable alignment. Throughout the excruciating visit, Georgiana maneuvered to emphasize her sophistication, her beauty, her supposed deep connection with Alexander. She referenced shared acquaintances, dropped hints about past intimacies, and generally attempted to make Eleanor feel inadequate. But Alexander remained firmly at Eleanor's side, his responses to Georgiana curt, his attention consistently returning to his wife. When Eleanor spoke, he listened with evident interest. When she made observations, he built upon them. His message was clear. Eleanor was his Duchess, his choice, his partner. Finally, pleading other engagements, Georgiana departed, her farewells brittle with barely concealed frustration. "Well handled," Alexander said quietly after her carriage disappeared down the drive. "She won't give up easily," Eleanor observed. "She's the type who cannot bear rejection." "Let her plot as she will." Alexander turned to face Eleanor fully. "She means nothing to me. Less than nothing. I want you to understand that." "I do," Eleanor said, and found it was true. Whatever she and Alexander had built together was real in a way Georgiana's machinations could never touch. That evening, Alexander knocked softly on the door connecting their chambers, the first time he had done so since their wedding night. "May I come in?" he asked when Eleanor opened it. "Of course." He entered, still fully dressed, but with his cravat loosened and his hair slightly disheveled, signs of inner turmoil Eleanor had learned to recognize. "I need to tell you something," he said without preamble, "about why I truly married you." Eleanor's heart began to race. "Alexander, please, let me finish." He ran a hand through his hair. "I told you I needed a competent, discreet partner. That was true, but not the whole truth." He moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit grounds. 5 years ago, I nearly married Georgiana. We were briefly engaged. She was beautiful, charming, everything I thought I wanted. "What happened?" Eleanor asked softly. "I discovered she was unfaithful. Multiple affairs, conducted brazenly while she planned our wedding." His voice hardened. "She viewed marriage to me as a title to acquire, a fortune to access. She didn't want a husband. She wanted a dukedom." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said, moving to stand near him. "That must have been devastating." "It was illuminating," he corrected. "I realized I had been seduced by surface beauty without examining character." After our engagement ended, I determined that any future marriage would be based on genuine compatibility and shared values, not passion or infatuation. He turned to face her. When I met you, Eleanor, I saw everything Georgiana lacked: integrity, genuine kindness, strength without cruelty, intelligence applied to practical good rather than social manipulation. But you also saw someone useful, Eleanor said quietly, someone who would make no emotional demands. I thought so, yes. His expression grew intense. But I was wrong, Eleanor. So very wrong. What do you mean? He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. I thought I wanted a marriage of convenience. What I've found is something infinitely more precious. These past months with you, our conversations, our shared work, the way you make me laugh, the way you've transformed Thornhaven from a house into a home. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. You've made me want things I thought I'd abandoned. Partnership in truth, not merely name. Companionship. Perhaps even what? Eleanor whispered, barely daring to breathe. Even love, he said simply. If you think such a thing possible. I know our arrangement was different. I know I have no right to ask for more than we agreed. But Eleanor, I find myself hoping. She silenced him by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tentative, questioning, and when he responded by wrapping his arms around her and deepening the embrace, Eleanor felt something inside her unfurl like a flower toward sunlight. I have been hoping too, she whispered when they finally broke apart, hoping you might come to care for me as more than a competent duchess, as more than a useful partner. Eleanor, his voice was rough with emotion, I care for you more than I thought myself capable of caring. You've shown me that duty and love need not be separate, that the strongest partnerships are built on both. He cupped her face gently. May I stay with you tonight? Not from duty or necessity, but because I want to be with you, because I'm falling in love with my own wife. Yes, Eleanor said, her heart soaring. Yes, Alexander, please stay. That night, in the intimacy of her chambers, with moonlight silvering the room and Alexander's arms warm around her, Eleanor reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a transaction had transformed into something neither had anticipated, a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and growing affection. She had entered this marriage believing love was impossible. Now, feeling Alexander's heart beat steadily against her own, she understood that sometimes the best love grows quietly, rooted in the soil of friendship and watered by daily kindness. What are you thinking? Alexander murmured against her hair. That I'm happy, Eleanor replied simply, genuinely, unexpectedly happy. As am I. He pressed a kiss to her temple. My remarkable duchess, my unexpected blessing. As Eleanor drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, she marveled at life's strange turnings. She had been the overlooked eldest daughter, the sacrificial spinster, the convenient choice. Yet, in accepting a marriage of practicality, she had found something infinitely richer, a love built to last, a partnership of equals, and a future filled with promise. The Duke of Ravenswood had begged her to be his duchess, but in the end, they had both found something far more valuable than titles or convenience. They had found each other, and that, Eleanor thought as sleep claimed her, was the greatest blessing of all. Dear reader, as our story draws to a close, consider Eleanor's journey. From invisible spinster to beloved duchess, not through transformation of herself, but through recognition of her inherent worth. Her story reminds us that true value lies not in youth or beauty, but in character, wisdom, and the courage to build something meaningful from practical beginnings. Alexander learned that the walls we build for protection often keep out the very connections we most need. His journey from guarded duke to loving husband shows us that it's never too late to not choose vulnerability, to risk caring, to open our hearts. May you find comfort in knowing that love can bloom in unexpected soil, that partnerships built on respect and shared values often prove stronger than those based solely on passion. May you see your own worth reflected back to you by those who truly know you. And may you sleep peacefully tonight, knowing that the best chapters of your story may still lie ahead, waiting to be written. From all of us at Legends of the Fall, sleep well and dream beautifully.